So we got ourselves another Team Go Rocket takeover event happening in Pokemon Go, and we gotta discuss which Pokemon you need to remove frustration off of, especially when it comes to PvP and raid Pokemon. That's precisely what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. Let's get right into it. Alright, how's it going everyone? Count Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon Go video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's get right into it. So, one of the most important in-game events that we get every so often is Team Go Rocket takeover events. And the reason for that is because you can remove frustration off of your Shadow Pokemon with the use of TMs, and that unlocks the full power of those Pokemon. There are certain Shadow Pokemon that are incredibly powerful when it comes to PvP and raid battles, and if you have frustration on those Pokemon, you need to get rid of it right away. So these are the Pokemon that I want to talk about specifically when it comes to both PvP and raid battles, and I do think that if you focus in on these Pokemon this time around, you're going to be good to go with the current PvP meta. So let's get right into it. Now, the information regarding all of these Pokemon is specifically taken from pvpoke.com. It's probably one of the best resources for what's best in PvP. And I looked at both the Great League rankings as well as the Ultra League rankings and determined which Shadow Pokemon you need to focus in on when it comes to removing frustration. And I basically looked at the top 20 in the rankings for both of those leagues, and then I picked out the Shadow Pokemon that you need to look at, and those are the Pokemon that I do believe that you need to prioritize this time around. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, let's go over the Great League. So, the Pokemon that I noticed within the top 20 of the Great League right now include Hoppip, which evolves into Jumpluff, Dusknoir, Totodile, Sableye, Malamar, as well as Galarian Weezing. So if you have any of the Shadow versions of these Pokemon, you need to remove frustration off of them right away. Use your TMs to remove frustration off of these Pokemon and then use them in PvP battles. They're definitely going to help you get higher ranks. It's definitely one of the most powerful list of Pokemon that we currently have. So for every one of the Pokemon that I'm about to list off, they're basically from pvpoke.com, which is, in my opinion, one of the best resources for the Go Battle League. If you want to get ahead in PvP, you need to make sure you check PvPoke every single day, because with the shifts in the meta, they're going to list off the rankings of the best Pokemon within each individual league. And currently within the Great League and Ultra League, there are certain Pokemon that are incredibly powerful, especially their Shadow forms. So those are the Pokemon I want to talk about, because if you want to get some immediate uses within the current season, then these are the Pokemon you should focus in on. Let's start off by talking about the Great League. So within the Great League, these are the Shadow Pokemon that are within the top 20 Pokemon. There is Jumpluff, Dusknoir, Feraligatr, Sableye, Malamar, and Galarian Weezing. Now, if you have any shadows of these Pokemon, you need to remove frustration off of them right away. And if you have good IVs to use them in battle, then they're going to be a great addition to your Great League teams. Next, let's move on to the Ultra League Pokemon that are really good as Shadow Pokemon. We have Lapras, Dusknoir, Feraligatr, Malamar, Grumpig, and Galarian Weezing. And you probably have noticed already that there is a bit of an overlap. So, aside from Lapras and Grumpig, we have Dusknoir, Feraligatr, Malamar, as well as Galarian Weezing. These are Pokemon that are great in the Ultra League along with the Great League. So, depending on which league you're struggling with, you might want to focus in on those specific Pokemon. They're going to be really good for both leagues. But if you're going to use it in the Ultra League, just keep in mind that you will need to power it up beyond the limits for the Great League, so you really have to pick and choose which league that's going to best fit your teams. And then finally, let's talk about the Shadow Pokemon that you need to focus in on when it comes to the Master League along with raid battles. Of course, there is Shadow Mewtwo. We got this Pokemon in Shadow Raids quite a while ago, but I do know there's a lot of players out there who still have their Shadow Mewtwo's with frustration. You need to prioritize these as much as you can. Regardless if it has good IVs or not, you need to remove frustration off of all of your Shadow Mewtwo's. The reason why I say that is because even at 0% IVs, a Shadow Mewtwo is going to deal more damage than a 100% purified Mewtwo. So if you want some really solid raid damage, you need to remove frustration off of all of your Shadow Mewtwo's. I guarantee you it's going to make raid battles and PvP just that much better, and it's something you should definitely prioritize. Now, another pair of legendary shadows that we got recently include Kyogre and Groudon. If you have any of these in your collection, you absolutely need to remove frustration off of them. And just like with Shadow Mewtwo, they're going to deal insane amounts of raid DPS, and even if they are at 0 IVs, you still want to remove frustration off of them. And maybe I won't suggest this unless you have a 100% IV Shadow Legendary, but if you want to use an elite Charge TM to get them their signature moves, specifically Origin Pulse for Kyogre or Precipice Blades for Groudon, that's going to make them even more powerful. So that is something you should definitely consider. And then, of course, we have Raikou. Shadow Raikou was also recently reintroduced into the game with Shadow Raids, and I will say that when it comes to Shadow Raikou, it's one of the best electric types you can have in your collection. It's incredibly powerful. It's not necessarily going to be great for PvP, but at least when it comes to raids, it's going to be a top tier electric type raid attacker. You do not want to miss out on that. So if you have any Shadow Raikous in your collection, make sure you remove frustration off of all of them so that you could immediately start using them in raids. And then we have Shadow Moltres as well as Shadow Entei for the very same reasons as Shadow Raikou. Both of these are top tier fire type raid attackers, and it's only if you remove frustration off of them. And just like with all the other Shadow legendaries that I mentioned, even if they're at crap IVs, like if they have 0% IVs, they're still going to be better than a 100% of their non-Shadow counterparts. So that is always something you need to keep in mind. Even if you do not plan to use them right away, remove frustration off of every single one of your Shadow Enteis and Shadow Moltres. Now, this is going to be a brand new addition with this Crown Clash Taken Over event, and that is going to be Shadow Dialga. Shadow Dialga is set to be one of the most powerful Pokemon in the game. You will definitely want to remove frustration off of any Shadow Dialga that you get, even if it is crummy IVs. It's going to be very important you do not forget to do that, especially because it's going to be a while before we get this Pokemon once again. It's just going to be introduced through Giovanni battles, and I will say that among all the legendary Pokemon that we get through Giovanni, this one is actually worth it. So I would suggest using your Super Rocket Radars to get yourself Shadow Dialga and then immediately remove frustration off of it, even before you appraise it. That's my suggestion. Maybe you're running low on TMs and you want to save them, but I do think that regardless, Dialga is definitely one of those Pokemon that regardless of whether it's good or not, you need to remove frustration off of it. And then finally, there is Shadow Garchomp. Now, when it comes to Shadow Garchomp, it's going to be one of the best raid attackers when it comes to dragon types and ground types, and in some cases it might actually be good when it comes to PvP. So you will want to make sure you remove frustration off of your Shadow Garchomps. It's definitely going to elevate your gameplay, especially when it comes to raid battles. And one really important fact regarding Shadow Gible and Shadow Garchomp is that it's currently available with this new Team Go Rocket Takeover event, because as they shuffle the Shadow Pokemon within the Team Go Rocket leaders, I believe it's Cliff or Arlo, maybe it's Cliff. Yeah, one of them will actually give you Shadow Gible. So if you happen to get yourself a really good one this time around, then make sure you remove frustration off of it, because like I said, Shadow Garchomp is definitely a monster. You will want to make sure you have one without frustration in your collection. And speaking along the same lines as Shadow Garchomp, if you have any Pokemon that you suspect are going to get a community day sometime in the future, I would suggest removing frustration off of them, especially if you want to preemptively have one of those Pokemon ready to go. I think it's one of the best practices in the game that anytime there is a Team Go Rocket takeover, you always try to remove frustration off of some of the Pokemon that you think are going to be really good, even if they're not going to be good at the very moment. Some of these include Quaxly. Like, I don't think there is a Shadow Quaxly yet, but if you were to have a Shadow Quaxly, we know that that Pokemon is going to have a community day really soon, probably sometime later this year, so it would be wise to remove frustration off of that Pokemon if you were to have it. But let's say there's a bunch of Magikarp in your collection. We do know that it will one day get a Community Day Classic, so make sure you remove frustration off of all of your Shadow Magikarp, because Shadow Gyarados is incredibly powerful, and even though it's not necessarily top tier, it's definitely one that will take you really far in certain raid battles. So yeah, these are just some of the things you need to consider. If you have a whole bunch of Shadow Pokemon in your collection, I really do think you need to go over all of them and make sure you remove frustration off of every single one of them. That's probably the best suggestion I would give, but at the very least, these are the Pokemon you could focus in on for this particular Team Go Rocket takeover. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. Is there a particular Shadow Pokemon that you're going to be removing frustration off of during this event? Or is there a particular Pokemon that I should have mentioned that I did not mention? If there is, make sure you mention it down below in the comments, and let's have a great discussion. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you ended up enjoying it, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that notification bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. Real quick, let me give a shout out to every single one of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the best way you could do that is going to be by joining my Patreon. And if you become a paid Patreon member, I'm going to add you to my Pokemon Go friends list. So that means for stuff like remote raids and the friendship system and opening and sending gifts. If you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a completely different way, you're always welcome to do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms you see on the bottom of your screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow, and you'll have access to some exclusive content, and you'll be able to keep up with my daily life. With all that said, that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself today, and I'll catch you all later.